Recording, good. Okay, and so I've got some boilerplate off the start. So good evening, everyone. For today's meeting, I'll be speaking in English primarily. If you have any questions, please pose them in the language of your choice, and we'll respond as best possible. Or if we can't respond to you right away, we'll get back to you with more information. Bonjour à tous. Pour la réunion ce midi, je m'exprimais en anglais, mais si vous en avez des questions, vous les posez dans la langue de votre choix et nous répondons du mieux possible. Mais si on a besoin de plus de temps pour répondre, nous vous recontacterons euh, pour vous fournir de plus d'informations. Okay, so that's exactly why I don't speak in French for most of the meeting. You got an example right there, but we'll work through it the best we can. So again, thanks everyone for coming in, and if you can mute the lines, that'd be great. And I will put a link here to the presentation into the chat. There we go. So if you do have the ability to be on computer and can follow along through your web browser, I think that's wonderful. Also, because you'll be able to access all the links to any of the.
I can use a plate for it.
Okay. So again, if we can get everyone to mute their lines, that would be fantastic. And here we go. Okay, so the purpose of these meetings, the officials updates are similar to what we do in the coaching programs and with the high performance programs, is to give our members who are in a particular category of participation an opportunity to have some direct dialogue with the national team, or sorry, national team, with the national staff, to ask questions, raise concerns, provide feedback. We think it's worked really well in the high performance program. And like I said, we tried this about a year ago to start off with the officials programming, and we are sort of trying to get onto an every 4 months schedule for these meetings. And for coaching, we'll do them every 4 months as well. We also do these for the provinces or for the provincial leadership, and we're trying to get those on an every 4 months as well. The high performance meetings, you're all welcome to attend any of those meetings. The high performance ones we do monthly simply because there's a lot of information and it tends to change quite quickly. Okay. So just a reminder, officials programming up on the national website. So boxingcanada.org on the officials page. The primary reason we've got it there is to have sort of an overview of the pathway, like what can you do with officials programming levels 1 through 4, and then internationally, what is the information that we have about getting beyond just officiating in Canada. We've also got a list of sort of popular documents and forms. If you happen to be perusing through there and you aren't able to find a particular form that you as an official would like to have in order to help with your participation and with your running programming, let us know. Because if we've got one, we'll make sure that we get it up and accessible. And if we don't have one, we're happy for you guys to supply. This is, a bout record sheet that's working really well for us. Here's a way to do scheduling that's working really well for us. We would love to share those. We also have information up about the National Officials Committee, including their terms of reference and who the current members are. The National Officials Committee, we did a bit of a revamp and included a few more people on the committee. There's now a representative of each province and territory on that committee in order to try to make sure that we've got a better flow of information from the committee out to the provinces. And we have a pretty, well, it's not substantial by any means, but I think a pretty good section with information for ring doctors. So we know that finding ring doctors is a challenge. And if we've got someone who's interested in helping us out for our competitions, we've got some resources that you can just send them the links and get them to look through. We've got 2 good presentations on there that really outline sort of what it means to be a ring doctor, what the responsibilities are, and what they need to be mindful of while they're helping out. And for someone who has no clue what being a ring doctor is like, especially like the details on what to look for during weigh-in, what to look for pre-bout, what you should be keeping your eyes open for when the athletes are in the ring, and what needs to be covered in the checks as the athletes are leaving the ring. This is a great resource. So I would encourage everyone to make good use of it. Um, we're going to get into the pathway in a second, but I want to give a rundown of sort of who are the current officials within Canada. And last year I was a little mopey, I will admit, when I started looking at our statistics and realized that we had fewer than 300 of our 10,000 members are in the officials category. I am happy to say that we have surpassed that in 2025 by a good margin, and we're up at 324 of registered officials for this season that we are now wrapping up as we look towards 2026. Out of those officials, I did a breakdown by province here for you as to what level of they are operating under, and I combined anyone who is, we've got some people who are only judge level 3 and that they're not doing ref, or they're only judge level 4. I've just included them in the 4s or 3s or 2s or 1s. And we also have a pretty significant number of unknown officiating levels. So I want to go kudos to Boxing Alberta, because you have no unknowns out of your membership information. So whoever is processing that member information and sending it into the national office, big thumbs up. They're doing a great job. Ontario, the number of unknowns is very, very small, so good job there too. But having that information is super important, and I know that Emily Dagenet from our office has been reaching out to the provinces to try to get as much of that information as we can. However, there's another little wrinkle on our unknowns here, in that for a number of our provinces, we don't have a lot of email addresses. And this isn't a problem strictly for our officials. This is across the board, all memberships. But if we don't have a personal email address for one of our shared members, because they're members of the province and they're members of Boxing Canada, then we can't get in touch with them in order to fill in details. So we would really, really like to get that information about the level of officials, because right now, out of the 324 memberships that we have, 147 are sitting as unknowns. So I know the members of the officials committee are working on that. Um, but even for them, some of them, they don't recognize some of the names of people who are registered as officials within their own province. And if there's no email attached, it can be very difficult to track that down. What I will say is, um, through our efforts to find out what all these levels are, I am actually uh, much happier about the distribution of who we got at different levels. And having 45 officials identified as being level 4 is a pretty healthy number. And I'm quite sure that when we get through the unknowns, we're going to see that the number of level 1s will continue to be significantly higher, but we'll have a lot more level 2s and level 3s showing up on the distribution chart. So just to give everyone an overview, there we are. Looking at the developmental pathway for officials, of course, we've got our sort of level system that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then some levels of international. And we are working on adding in this ring supervisor official course that will be available for everyone. And just so that everyone knows, the sort of distribution of who's responsible for what is sort of level 1, 2, and 3 are strictly the responsibility of the provinces. So if you are a level 1 official and you are looking to become a level 2 official, you need to contact your province, and your province can set up officials clinics and workshops and opportunities for testing in order to get you bumped up. When we get up to level 4, that's where the NSO becomes involved, and the National Officials Committee has, towards the end of the summer, committed that we will have at least 2 level 4 upgrade opportunities per year. One of those will be in the east, one of those will be in the west. Um, and certainly, c'est très important d'avoir des opportunités en français, aussi en anglais. We need to have both English and French opportunities available for our membership. And so we'll make sure that those opportunities are there. The level of event that we need in order to be able to run the level 4 it is an area that needs to be examined carefully, right? We need to have it as truly a national level event with a high quality group of athletes on hand. And we need to have good mentors and other RJs around, even while that course is on, to make sure that we, can maintain that high standard on behalf of those athletes and coaches who are participating. So I would expect that we will continue using events like the Quebec Open, Quebec Provincials, Ontario Provincials, probably our national U17, U19, and U23 championships for those level 4 upgrade opportunities. It is elite nationals is always tempting because, of course, we've got the best level athletes there. However, because it's only a one ring event, it really severely limits the number of additional officials we can put into the competition. Um, and I see the question coming in from FQBO. We did receive that. I got a note from Emily saying that she's got it, but it looks like she hasn't actually been able to get those into the system yet. So apologies if I made it feel like you were called out there. I think we've got that information from you. So thank you. We really appreciate it. And there's always questions around the international levels, and there is a lot of there are a lot of unknowns right now. Um, uh, World Boxing is, of course, standing up a new international federation. They've got a lot on their plate, and they're operating in a very top-down manner right now. And I would suggest that they have a plan. They are not sharing details of that plan to the degree that certainly I would like, or I would suggest most of you guys would like. But we are starting to see opportunities being planned for 2026, especially around our continental championships, which continental championship in 2026 tentatively planned for August, September, or October, and where there will be an opportunity for nations to be able to send in one or two of their top officials who have not yet been evaluated by World Boxing for that evaluation process. So we're looking forward to making use of those opportunities as they come up. But we essentially we are looking for more information. If you are currently a 1-star, 2-star, or 3-star from the previous international federation, and you are active, we will be prioritizing trying to get you into those opportunities for world boxing evaluation, because we want to get as many Canadians, of course, able to help out at the international level as possible, because we know that our international officials learn a lot while they're away internationally, and when they come home, they're able to share all that information with the rest of us. And quite selfishly, of course, that benefits the national team if we can have similarity between the judging style here at home and what we're seeing out internationally. So I'm going to pause there for a second. I'm going to take a sip of my tea And if anyone has any questions about sort of the developmental pathway or any of the information that's been presented, please speak up.
Hey, Chris.
Oh, hey, yep, Sunny.
Yeah, I'm glad you talked about World Boxing being able to upgrade some of our officials. We have some two-star officials that could be a three-star in my mind, and they haven't been getting an opportunity for the last bunch of years. So I hope this is going to be a lot better.
Yeah, we're really, really hopeful that World Boxing is able to come through on the plans that they have right now, especially around the competition calendar. So they, of course, are responsible for running our multi-sport tournaments, so things like the Commonwealth Games, Pan Am Games, and Olympics. They've also, of course, got the World Championships. There is a level of competition below that called the World Cup, which is essentially preparation for the World Championships with four scheduled World Cup events per year, which is fantastic because that's a lot of work for a lot of officials around the world. And they have also on been in their planning documents been pushing this idea of a sub World Cup, international national team versus national team competition called the World Challenge Cup. There are again four of those on the schedule for 2026. We don't have exact dates or locations yet. But if we've got four of those events and add on four World Cups, and then add on our higher level tournaments, our multi-sport tournaments as well, we are gonna see a whole lot of opportunities for international officials. So I think that will bode well in the future for having these additional opportunities for Canadians.
Thank you, Chris.
Great. Okay, a quick note on documenting officials' education. So one of the things that we found around trying to figure out what level everyone is of our officials is that it would be really nice to have one centralized place in order to hold this information. And when we talked to a number of other sports, one of the tools that they were using, or has been used quite extensively now, is they are actually putting officials' documentation of levels into the coaching database run by the Coaches Association of Canada. And that doesn't mean that the Coaches Association will be running officials' education. It absolutely does not. But we have the ability to put in references to other courses that people have taken. And we are going to try this out through 2026. So as officials are upgraded, as they take clinics, as they go through and successfully pass evaluation items, if you can let either the national office know, so if you run a level 3 clinic and six people are successful, just pass on their names to us, and we will take care of documenting that in the database. Um, provinces, all provinces have at least one member who has been designated as being able to enter coach programming information into that database. They can do that work as well. So it doesn't need to come through the national office. It could be done through whoever it is that has coach access to the NCCP database. But we would really like this to happen, and we're going to go out of our way to try this out. There are a few benefits to this. So the first is one, there's a repository that lives beyond the participation of any one volunteer within a province or within the nation to be able to hold on to that information so that if we lose that volunteer or that staff person or whoever, they move on to something else, we don't all of a sudden be scrambling to try to find that information if they've left. Another benefit of this is there is a lot of very high quality free education available through the Coaches Association of Canada. And a lot of that education, of course, being coach centric, is not directly related to what people are doing as officials. But there are free available courses on safe sport. There are free available courses on concussion protocols. There are free available courses on dealing with young people who are learning in different ways and are different and are we only seem to learn through TikTok and YouTube that we may not as older people in the boxing world be used to. And because that high quality education is there, I just feel it's a good fit. We also know that in a number of our provinces, you need to have some level of education around concussion protocols. And we can document that through the locker system, that online database, either because you've done a CAC provided course or you've done a course from outside of the Coaches Association. So, for instance, I suspect a lot of you who've been involved for the past 5 or 6 years will have had to have gone through the Respect in Sport program. Um, all of those Respect in Sport records are already in the NCCP locker database. So even if you have never accessed the locker, there is a file on you that you can have access to if you wish. And we encourage people to look that up. We can help you find that information if you have no idea what I'm talking about. But our operating procedure going forward in 2026 will be as soon as we either upgrade or update a record for an official, or we get a new record for an official come in through the provinces, we will send an email directly out to that official saying, hey, congratulations on getting your level 1 judge. Um, we have a record of you doing that, and if you are interested in any of these other, coach related or officiating related educational things, here's where to find concussion information and a course. Here's where to find a safe sport course, and that will direct them to the locker, and they'll be able to access it through there. So that's sort of where our plan is at this point. Speaking of concussion awareness, of course, I touched on this now. I really think we should be pushing, and the officials committee decided I think it was late last year, that we are going to, for 2026, require officials. I shouldn't say require. Well, maybe I should say require. I can't remember exactly what the committee said, but they certainly thought it was a good idea. So when you become a level 2 official, we will be actively pushing for you to go and do the Making Headway in Sport. It's a concussion management education program through the CAC. It's free. You can do it at home on the computer or your phone, and you can do it anytime. So it's a pretty low bar for entry, but it does meet a lot of the provincial requirements that are creeping up around concussion awareness and concussion management. And so you guys know we are going to make a hard change in the coach development stream that says all levels of coaches beginning in 2026 will have to go through that education as they are moving up through the levels. And that's something I want to underline here. We are not going to push existing officials to um, to get this education. We'll suggest that you do it, but there will be no absolute requirement. It will just be for officials moving up through the program who hit that point at level 2 that will really push it out towards them. Okay. Any questions on that documentation or anything about the CAC database or concussions?
Hey, Chris, I think that's a great idea for the officials.
Yeah, and I think the ability to just go in and do the education anytime, and have it in a very sporty context is nice. And that's one of the things that the CAC excels at. And just so everyone knows, I didn't touch on it verbally, but in the other slide, I said, we looked up actually all of the officials in Canada for whom we have information and cross-referenced how many of them already had accounts um, on the CAC's database, and it was more than 80%. So I don't think we're going to be asking a whole lot of people to do something new, but they may just never have accessed that system yet that they already had access to if they so chose. Okay, so we're going to move on. Supervisor course update. So, a small subcommittee of our officials have been working on a program that had been piloted a little bit and work done through Ontario around putting together a course for supervisors. So it's really targeted at any official who is a level 3 or up. And we are going to run them as needed, but we suspect we'll be planning on sort of 2 or 3 of these per year and sort of distributing them around the country. And really the goal of this is to promote um, sort of a unified approach to what we should be seeing at competition. And it will be focused on ensuring that we've got standardized practices, high quality refereeing and judging, and that the that an athlete and a coach who are going to a provincials in Manitoba, who then go to a national championships in Saskatchewan, are seeing a similar, if maybe somewhat scaled up, a similar pattern of execution on the ground at competition. And for people who are already supervising, I don't think we're gonna, take everyone and force them to go through this course. But what I suspect we'll be doing is we'll be sharing the course materials because there's no secrets to any of this stuff, so that the current supervisors can take a look through and, oh yeah, okay, I'm doing that, I'm doing that. Oh, I hadn't thought of that one thing, right? Or I'm doing way more than is required in a lot of areas. So then you feel really good about yourself. So I think that's how we're going to approach it. But new supervisors, we really think that this will be a great opportunity to both educate, but also bring some confidence to everyone that they're going to be ready to go and run competitions on behalf of their province, their region, and of course Boxing Canada. Um, we will also entertain sort of if we have, say, Quebec goes and says, "Hey, I've got like 8 or 9 people who are ready to do this course. Can we just run a course just for us?" Yes, we will make that happen. We're not going to make anyone wait. If a province has a bunch of people who are ready to do something, we will be happy to put something together in the same way that, say, like Patrick Denis and the coaching program right now are doing, a performance analysis course on the coaching side, because they have a group of coaches who are ready to go, and we don't want to keep them waiting. So same thing on the official side with supervisor courses and any other courses. Okay, a quick note on officiating outside of Canada. So some of you hopefully will be aware that we had for a period of time an official national policy saying that if you were competing outside of Canada and it was in a border state, but not some border states down in the US or for some countries, that you had to go and complete this international travel permit system, which was basically a list of people's names and a verification that they were members of Boxing Canada, and a note about their COVID status, had they been vaccinated or not. The reality is that we had some provinces who were really, really good about adhering to that policy at that time, and other provinces who either didn't know that it existed or were ignoring it completely. But they were ignoring it simply because no one in the States ever asked them to produce these documents. I had a very awkward conversation with the head of USA Boxing during their national championships one year when I said, according to my records, you've only got one Canadian participating, and there were 30 Canadians participating. But only one of them had actually filled in the form, and the person who was running their national championships had never heard of this policy that they had at some point in the past asked for to be in place. So when we heard that, the board allowed me to deprecate that policy. So it's no longer a rule that it needs to happen, but now this is more of a suggestion. And since we made it a suggestion, we did two things. And the first was we added officials onto this program. So if you have an official going down to, a club show because their Canadian club is going down with, 5 or 6 athletes and a couple coaches, and they're coming down to help with the officiating, then you just add the official's name on there as well. That way we get a record of who's going where. We start to get some statistics around, what level of official is going down to the States. In the same way that for athletes, what's the age of Canadian athletes when they first go down to the US or overseas for competition? For coaches, on average, how many coaches are we sending with how many athletes? Like, what's the supervision ratio look like in general? And this is very useful information for us when we're starting to put together revisions to our athlete development model and how we're planning around changes to the coaching program. So we would like to do the same thing around officiating. Um, and it's a good practice. And I know that the US competitions who rely on this rely on it quite heavily because when they get a form that says Boxing Canada and the province that the athlete or the coach or the official is associated with certify that they are in fact members, then that US competition organizer has some confidence that those Canadian participants are at a reasonable level of competency. And I'm quite sure for their insurance, it looks really good. In the same way that when we have a nationally sanctioned tournament in Canada, any US competitors or competitors from overseas from other countries, they have to provide proof of membership. And this is just one really easy way to provide that proof of membership, more than just showing up with a card or a book, right? Okay. And the other thing that we've done with the ITPs is we have added a safe sport component because I know a lot of the US states are now interested in the same way that we are in safe sport, and they require some sort of notification that anyone who's traveling down to participate has some sort of safe sport education. We have never, to the best of my knowledge, been asked that question around officiating, but we absolutely get asked this question around coaching. So you'll see there's a column on that form that says, can we verify that there's been some form of safe sport education provided to that individual? So since we moved away from this being a hard policy, we've actually seen more ITPs being submitted. And I don't know whether that's just because we're traveling more or whether, people are just less adverse to filling things out. But I also like to think that it's a benefit in that we are also using this form now and can and have the form set up so it can be used by clubs as sort of like an emergency contact form. So we added in, for each one of your athletes or coaches or officials, is there a parent, guardian, spouse, emergency contact? What's their emergency contact phone number and email? Just so that when you're traveling, you've got that one document that you're having to hand over to the competition organizers to say that you're legit, but you've also got that just in case of emergency, and all the information is there for you. So kind of a two birds, one stone. Okay. Any questions about That or the supervisor course.
I have one, Chris.
Yep, go ahead, Sonny.
Okay, years ago, it used to be mandatory for anyone going over to the US or anywhere to fill out a form saying where you were going, what you were doing, blah, blah, blah. And it was required because for insurance purposes. Because if they didn't register with the Boston Interior or whatever province to go over, and something happened to them, we were told that the insurance wouldn't cover them.
So on a province by province basis, there may be an insurance implication there. From a national point of view, we don't have insurance that covers our Boxing Canada members at that level. In fact, to the best of my understanding, and it is somewhat limited in this area, if a Canadian athlete goes down, I'll use Canadian athlete as an example, as opposed to official. If a Canadian athlete goes down to Texas and competes in an event in Texas, that they would be subject to the insurance regulation that that event had in Texas for things like third-party liability, and medical insurance is a whole other coverage topic, right? And I would suggest that our certainly the national level of insurance, we do have medical coverage insurance for people going overseas to compete, but only as members of the national team. So that might be a province by province thing. So provinces, I mean, I think everyone who goes out of the country in order to compete should probably be filling one of these out. However, the idea that making it mandatory, I mean that sounds good, but how would we ever enforce that? Um, if we've got someone who goes and competes down in Syracuse across the border and then doesn't tell anyone and comes back, I mean, like we just never know, right? And given how many people were not making use of the ITP system in the past, um, this is why we moved away from having it as a strict policy because it didn't have any effect on a national level. But certainly province by province, if provinces would like to make this mandatory, I'm all for it. Um, but we've also got some provinces like in BC where to the best of my knowledge, we've never received a ITP request coming in from any of our BC members. But I'm also 100% sure that no one in Oregon or Washington State are asking to see them. So why would you need to do it? And we would love to have that information, but there's no incentive in the system right now for them to do it. So that's why we like the idea of it being a voluntary thing at
Hey,
this
Chris,
point.
sorry, I'm using my laptop and I can't find my raise a hand thing,
Oh yeah, no problem, Tom.
but on this topic, I always sent them in because we're an hour away from both borders. So
Mhm.
we were down in Spokane in Idaho a lot, and I always sent my travel permits in. But what I didn't realize was the first 15 years I thought we had medical coverage until I had an incident, and I happened to call Boxing BC, the head of Boxing BC at the time, and she's like, "No, we don't. This has nothing to do with insurance. This is just a travel permit to let you know." And yeah, so it was eye opening because if there is officials out there that go across and fill out their travel permit, I thought the insurance covered over, but you have to buy your own personal insurance per athlete.
Yeah, so that's a great personal reflection and glad we figured that out at some point. I mean, if the membership is interested in having the option for travel insurance to be associated with membership, that's certainly something we can look into, but I can guarantee it will no longer be a free travel pass. Right?
Yeah,
But if there is a net benefit there, and if we could do that at a national level, but not at a provincial level, there may be some advantages to having that construct, in that your international coverage comes from the NSO as opposed to burdening a PSO with it. It's something we can look into, but we will need a mandate from our provinces. So if anyone out there has strong feelings about it, I'd suggest have a discussion with your provincial leadership to say, hey, is this something we considered? Do we have any insurance coverage? Do we need it? Is there clarity around the situation? And then certainly, I mean, if the provinces come back to us and say, hey, we really think this is something that you as an NSO should be covering, then we'll go out and start getting quotes. Because I can tell you, our insurance company would love to have another product that we're buying from them.
If anything, maybe an information email to go out like, hey, realize when you go across the line or go out of the country, you need to provide your own athlete and coach insurance. We do not cover. Because I was never aware of it, and maybe that's ignorant on me, but it wasn't until we had an incident I didn't know we weren't covered.
Well, and we're so privileged as someone who's lived in the States, and competed extensively in the States. We are so in our own world with our universal access, difficult as it may be from time to time, but at least we know that in an emergency we're not going to get stranded.
Yeah.
And being in the States, it is a different world. So. Okay, good discussion there, and I've made some notes about possible topics to bring up with the PSOs. So reminder about rulebooks. So we've got the rulebooks published up on Boxing Canada. So we have our Boxing Canada specific rulebook. We also have both an English and French version of the World Boxing rulebook. And I just want to draw attention and kudos where it's due to Tommy Amaral and a number of the officials in Ontario who put together this cheat sheet on matchmaking, where they went through the rule book and took all of the rules around weight differences and experience differences and time in the ring for round length and everything, and combined it all into just 2 pages, so that as you are running a show or a tournament, you can very quickly go through and double check, are we meeting all of the requirements of our matchmaking? And just it is a valuable resource, and we just applaud everyone who contributed to that, and we're very thankful that they were willing to share it. And a good example of, if you've got a good tool that could be used by other people, we'd really love access to it and to be able to share it out at the national level. I also want to highlight that a number of provinces are still making references to IBA and AIBA, of course, even before that. And those references really need to be updated. We've had this discussion directly with the PTSO leadership, and we haven't seen a lot of movement on it. But starting in 2026, I've got national team members who I'm going to be paying to go and comb through websites and mark down the exact pages where they're finding these references, and we will be sending that information directly to the PSOs for update. We would really prefer, if possible, that you guys are linking to information that is held on the national page, rather than hosting that information yourself. And that's simply because when we update yearly the rulebook, that way everyone's rulebook gets updated at the same time, and we don't have a 2017 version out there and a 2019 version out there and a 2020 version and a 2023, right? And that we all just have a single one there. I am well aware that the Boxing Canada website is maybe not the most aesthetically pleasing or efficient website in the world. We're very slowly working on that, but it is not to be honest, it's not a huge priority for us, given that it is just a repository for information. And from that point of view, I think it's working out pretty well. But and I will admit, we do have two references to IBA and AIBA on our website currently. And one of them is actually a very, very good resource. I mentioned it earlier for ring doctors. And it is like a 90-page slide deck on how to be a good ring doctor around boxing. And the reality is it's really well written. It's got beautiful pictures in it. It's really easy to understand. And unfortunately, it's in PDF, so I don't have the ability to, scratch out all the IBA or AIBA references that are in it. But as we find those references, we are trying very hard to change them. The other reference that we have to IBA that we can't get rid of, unfortunately, until the end of this coming year, is actually on our blue record books because we made a huge order of record books to take advantage of some volume discounts. But that means we're still working through rule books that still have IBA written on them. So I know that's bad on us, and we apologize to our partners at World Boxing, but we're working through. Any questions about rulebook stuff? Oh, and I will say, any officials who have ideas on either format changes or rule changes, those should be communicated to the members of our National Officials Committee, and then the National Officials Committee makes recommendations to the Board of Directors, who will then approve or don't approve changes to the rule book. And we aim for once a year. Although if we found that there was something that needed to be changed on short notice, we have the ability to do that.
Sorry, it's me again, Chris.
No, don't apologize, Sonny.
For the Boxing Canada matchmaking sheet, last Saturday in Hamilton, we had an Irish team here. There was a couple of boxers that were matched up with our Canadian boxers according to our guidelines, but the coaches wouldn't let the match go because they thought it was too much. Is there anything in that sheet that applies to international people coming in? Because they came out here all the way to fight, right? And then they said, no, we're not going to we're not taking that because there's too much weight difference.
Yeah, I mean, in Canada, we operate under our rule book, and it follows in with the guidance that we have from World Boxing. Although, to be clear, like World Boxing doesn't care about a lot of the programming that we have, right? They are primarily focused on Olympic, World Cup, World Championships level competition, right? So if it's beyond U19, they don't care, right? They're just silent in that area. So we essentially make that stuff up. I would encourage anyone who has international competitors coming to one of their shows or tournaments, make sure that they understand what our rule book says. Because it is really unfortunate when someone travels all this way and then they get surprised by something, right? I think one of the tenets that we should all be working on is we try not to surprise people in sport, right? Um, uh, it's difficult to say without knowing any of the details whether the Irish were more correct or less correct. Although the last time I was in Ireland and watching a U15 tournament, I mean they had 1,000 kids there, and when you've got 1,000 kids at the U15 level at a regional level tournament, it becomes a lot easier to be a lot tighter with your matchmaking than it is in Canada, where we don't have 1,000 U15 athletes in the entire country. So I will say that. I mean, if we have some concern that came up through this experience that maybe we need to have different guidelines around weight differences and whatever, that's something for the National Officials Committee to be aware of, and they can consider it and decide whether we're going to make a move on. Okay, moving on. Quick update on para boxing. So, at our national championships coming up in November in Winnipeg, shout out to everyone from Manitoba on the call. We will have a demonstration of para boxing, specifically wheelchair class boxing. We have a sort of a two-pager available for people to take a look at that explains in a little more detail what we're attempting to do. But I would characterize this not as a national paraboxing championship. It is truly a demonstration of what paraboxing looks like, feels like, and how it operates. And it will be an experience for the athletes who are participating, the coaches who are assisting those athletes, and for the officials who are going to be working very, very likely with para athletes for the very first time. So there are all sorts of questions that I get, particularly from officials, around, well, how can you even do para boxing? And the answer is take a look on YouTube and you'll see lots of examples. It is virtually identical to able-bodied boxing, with the exception that the athletes are sitting in wheelchairs and are propelling themselves around the ring on wheelchairs. And I know that a lot of officials say, "Whoa, this feels too weird to me. I'm not able to deal with this." And I don't blame you for feeling that way. If you've never worked with para athletes before, it can seem like a massive, massive change. However, in my experience with para athletes, they are tough as nails. They have a great humor about themselves and about sport participation. And they are just looking to participate in any way that is possible. And we have a very modest amount of money from the federal government in order to sort of spur on this idea of paraboxing. And this is essentially what we're using that money for this year, is to have this demonstration go down. So at the nationals, all the officials, coaches, and athletes involved are going to have an opportunity to sort of go step by step through what paraboxing looks like in a non championship environment, right? Just what does weigh-in look like? How do you weigh someone in if they're in a wheelchair, right? Does the wheelchair count towards their weight, right? Like all these questions that come in your mind. What happens if, how do they get into the ring, right? And the answer is they just find a way to get in the ring, right? The officials don't help able-bodied athletes into the ring. You don't help para athletes into the ring too. They're quite capable. If they're trained enough to be able to punch each other, they're trained enough to be able to move themselves in and out of wheelchairs. Um, and for anyone who's curious, the answer is they usually use like a wheelchair rugby or wheelchair basketball style of wheelchair in the ring. So they're moving around, and the wheels are sort of canted in so that's harder for them to tip. It is possible for them to tip out of their wheelchair. And how do you deal with that as an official? The exact same way you deal with it if an athlete falls in the ring while competing, right? If it wasn't their fault, you signal that it wasn't their fault, and you and once they're back up and ready to go again, you check their gloves to make sure there's no dirt and grime on it so no one's going to get hurt, right? And then box, it just continues from there. So we'll be working through all that. I'm hopeful that we will probably have between 3 and 4 bouts occur as part of the program of the championships. But like I said, there will be no national champions assigned at that. Okay. Through that experience, we expect that we'll be able to put together some formal education that can then be tagged on to our existing coach development system and our officials development system, so that we can start to create spaces for these athletes to compete if they wish. And I I want to make sure it's absolutely clear for everyone. I do not anticipate that we will have a sudden rush of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of wheelchairs showing up at our clubs and at our competitions. We're talking about a very small number of athletes, and matchmaking for them is going to be particularly challenging because you've got classification issues around their physical abilities that limit whether they can compete against each other or not. And we do also know that because I'm sure some of you are thinking of it, hey, I've had a para athlete in the ring who has a lower leg injury of some sort, and whether they wear a prosthesis or they have a lack of movement or whatever, and they're able to compete in regular able-bodied boxing. What does that mean for paraboxing? And the answer is doesn't mean anything. If they feel comfortable competing in able-bodied boxing, that's great. That's inclusion, that's keeping them going, that's adding to the atmosphere and culture around our sport. So we're happy to continue with that. It could be that we eventually have standing para categories at a national championships, but we are a long way away from that at this point. But you know, by 2032, that would be amazing if we could have that. Okay, down to our last three slides. I want to do a quick update on Say Sport for in the officiating context. So my line for athletes and coaches is always Say Sport just means don't be a jerk. And officials are in a privileged space in that you guys are impeccably behaved and it's part of the culture around officiating. Where we have the issue around officials is that our athletes and our coaches have not historically been impeccably behaved. Some of them have been complete gentlemen and gentlewomen, I guess, gentle people. But what I see when I'm at regional competitions, provincial competitions, and national competitions at times is extremely poor behavior directed towards officials. And very often it meets the standard of maltreatment within the current Canadian Say Sport context. So I think it is extremely important that all officials get themselves educated on what the current understanding of safe sport is within the Canadian sport context. And if you are a level 1, level 2, or level 3, there is an amazing free course available through the Coaches Association of Canada called the National Coach Certification Program Safe Sport Training. It takes about 20-25 minutes to do. Fantastic. You will learn something at that course, and primarily you will learn something about what happens if I am maltreated or if I see maltreatment. Right? If you're a level 4 plus official, you are going to have to take the Canadian Safe Sport Program e-learning, which is on a different platform and it's tracked differently. And this is the same platform that all of our national team coaches, national team athletes, all coaches and all athletes who are participating at a national championships need to do this. And all the officials who are participating at that national championships need to do this. Anyone is able to do it, right? So if all of you are interested in doing just the CSSP, the Canadian Safe Sport Program version of the course, go right ahead. I strongly encourage you. But it is a absolute ironclad requirement for participation at a national championships going forward. And one of the changes that the Canadian safe system around safe sport has been trying to implement is that we need to hold poor behavior accountable before it starts snowballing into something that becomes a larger issue. So for instance, if there are coaches chirping at an official at the end of a bout, we need to do something about that. And how you as officials go about dealing with it is going to be very contextual depending on the situation you're in. But someone needs to speak to those coaches, even if they're just muttering under their breath, right? Because what I've seen is that a lot of it is performative, right? Your athlete is upset that they've lost. You're upset and embarrassed maybe that your athlete has lost as a coach. And so you start chirping a little bit and blaming the officials. And then members of the crowd or parents start to see, oh, well, if the coach thinks it's okay to chirp at the officials, then they're going to chirp at the officials. And now that coach and that athlete who are walking off are also hearing members of the crowd chirping at the officials. And so it becomes a spiral and it starts to escalate. And I think we've all heard of, if not been at, boxing competitions where we've seen that escalation get out of control. And we can't have this happening. It is keeping people from feeling that they're able to participate, and certainly officials, but also coaches and athletes. And boxing is supposed to be a classy sport. We all know it can be, and we want to have that reinforced as much as possible. So I really encourage everyone to take the education, learn something about it, and like I said, if we can nip things in the bud quickly with just a quick, hey, am I able to talk to you for a sec as a coach is walking off the pitch? Hey, when you said that about the official, that was no good, right? And if we see you do that again at this tournament, we will not have you continue to participate at the tournament. I have been involved in a number of different sports at the national and international level. And I gotta say, poor behavior ends very quickly when athletes start getting disqualified. And I'm not suggesting that we want to jump to that level prematurely, but know that it is in your toolbox. And Boxing Canada will back you up 100% that if an official feels that athletes or coaches need to be removed from the field of play in order to create a safe environment, then we'll support you. Absolutely. Okay. So I just want to make that clear for everyone, because we have to continue working on the culture in this sport. There are so many good things about it that I don't want to lose those good things because of a few, poor actors. Okay. Quick note on our trans policy. So we now have finally a pretty explicit policy from World Boxing around genetic testing. This has put our current trans policy essentially in opposition to what the World Boxing policy is. I think that the outcomes of our policy and the outcomes of the World Boxing policy actually look quite similar in that we're protecting safety, fairness, and then thinking about participation. But there will be a change to our trans policy coming. We just need a little bit more time at the board level in order to get all of our ducks in a line and be able to push that through. So just a heads up that's coming. I also have to say we have not had a lot of uptake on our trans policy, and we have not had any approvals of trans athletes participating. So just to let everyone know. Okay, and last slide. So the National Officials Committee sort of has a list of things that they're thinking about going forward. And I just wanted to touch on all of these for you, because if you have any strong opinions, we'd love to hear them. One, we need more officials, right? I was all excited that we have 324 officials, for 2025. That's up by over 30 officials. Oh, and I don't think I missed out on an opportunity to congratulate British Columbia. BC put in a policy saying that if you were going to have a registered club within the province, that you had to register at least one official per club, in order to try to boost those numbers, particularly at the lower end. So kudos to BC, Boxing BC, for the work that they've done there. I think it's a smart policy. I think it's a great way to encourage clubs to at least find someone to put forward. And if we can retain a number of those officials and give them a positive experience, I'm quite sure that we'll be able to get more. Safe sport environment. Again, we just chatted about that and the need to support an environment that's safe, not just for our athletes, but also for our officials and coaches. And then looking at development opportunities. So the training pathway, there's more detailed information on the website about sort of what it takes to be a level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. So we're continuing to work on that and trying to schedule out courses in advance starting in 2026. But we've also got this idea around ongoing training. And for ongoing training, this is things like workshops that can be run at some of our major competitions, so that any official, whether they're working at the competition or not, and they just happen to be in the same city or province or whatever and want to come and participate, right? What are some of the latest news from World Championships on how officiating was conducted there? what is the current standard for, trying to evaluate the judging criteria, yeah, and learning that from some of our most experienced officials. We're trying to find opportunities for that. The other thing that we've done, and we're starting this in Winnipeg, is that there will be an additional position available amongst all the officials that is an evaluator slash mentor role. And that evaluation slash mentor role is there to be able to provide direct feedback to our referees and judges that is not having to come through the TD. So it's a separate person who's providing. I want to emphasize the mentor role more than the evaluator role. At a world boxing level, they use the term evaluator, but I like the term mentor, right? So when we see an official who's in the ring and the mentor is looking at the technique and the style and saying, oh, you know what, here's three pieces of feedback for you on how you did, right, in order to make you better, right? And the idea there is, because this evaluator mentor is not part of the competition, they're not there to beat down on anyone. They're there to try to elevate everyone, right? I could also characterize their role as a coach for the R&Js who are there at the competition. I also hope that this will free up the TD a little bit from having to provide direct feedback, because there's a lot to do when you're a TD, specifically around a national level competition. So we've sort of separated out those two roles so that TD can focus on TD stuff, and the evaluator slash mentor can focus on elevating the experience for each of those R&Js to make, us have an entire room of really fantastic R&Js by the end of the week. The other piece here is international experience. And we are now in a situation where we have got an international federation who is on track for providing more opportunities. But we've also looked at how we are operating within the national team. And you will see that the national team program, which is a document that comes out targeted towards athletes and coaches, and is essentially, if I want to get selected to the national team, how do I do that? And what opportunities are there through the entire year to go on tour or on competition or on camps with the national team? We are adding in a section to that document strictly for officials, where if we have a national team who is going down, like last year, we sent a team to Les Ceintures over in France. And we were contacted by Les Ceintures, and they said, hey, we would really like if you could send over some officials as well. And so we did. We had a small, unfortunately not enough money, but a small amount of money in order to support those officials to go over. But the way that we selected those officials was not all that transparent, right? It was sort of based on need and who we had in front of us at any given time. What we are going to do is we're going to put together a more broad process that is as transparent as we can make it and is published at the beginning of the year. So all of those opportunities are known and available to everyone. And essentially, if you're interested, primarily if you're a level 4 or up, if you're interested in going to one of those opportunities, then you put your name forward, and there is a set of minimum criteria that everyone needs to meet, and then there's probably some amount of, there'll be a random selection of the people who have their name in the pot. We will not make those free. I need to emphasize that. We do not have riches falling down from the sky upon us, unfortunately. I would love if we could, but we can't. So it'll be a subsidized amount, and we are hopeful that, provinces may be able to kick in a little bit, clubs may be able to kick in a little bit, and maybe local sponsors might be able to kick in a little bit as well, so that officials have these opportunities. But we want to make as many of these opportunities available as we can. Some of those opportunities will be around competition. Some of them will be around camps, where we are looking at bringing in certain officials in order to help out with our camps, to be able to provide that non-coach performance feedback to our athletes. I will also preface all of this by saying we have no control over the invitations that we receive from World Boxing for our officials. World Boxing makes those decisions. We do not. So when it comes to, who's going to continental championships, who's going to World Cups, who's going to World Challenges, we don't have control over that. If we eventually get some control over that, then we will put together a set of criteria. But at this point, World Boxing makes those decisions completely independent of even letting the NSO know who's going in different places. So just to let everyone in on that. Sanctioned competition reporting. So I've been reminding the provinces off and on for the last year. Anytime there is a sanctioned competition within a province, at some point in the past, we used to get to the NSO. Those competition reports would be filtered up to us so that we have documented information about who's competing, how many injuries, if there were any, which officials were active and not active, just the basic overview of what was going on. Since I've been here, that has almost never happened with some minor exceptions, and kudos to BC because you guys are the exception. But it's not happening. And I really need this to start happening. We had an unfortunate incident in Winnipeg, of course, a week and a half ago. And we are starting to get some questions from insurance companies around what's your documentation around injuries at your sport at a national level. And the only thing I can give them is the nationally sanctioned competitions, which is only like 3 or 4 per year. But I've got no understanding of what's going on at the provincial level. And I'm 100% sure that if we had full information on our injury rates, that we would actually be in a situation to have our insurance rates go down because all the normative information available internationally says that boxing is a middle to low risk sport, particularly in comparison to other team sports and other combat sports. So hockey, soccer, football, certainly all injury rates much higher than boxing. Compared to the other combat sports, judo and karate and wrestling, much higher incident of injury than in boxing. And when you look at individual sports on the winter side, alpine and freestyle skiing, significantly higher injury rates than boxing. But yet we're treated as though we're an incredibly dangerous sport without people really taking the time to understand that we have some of the most robust medical oversight in the entire world of sport. So I want us to be able to take some credit for that. I would love to get some discounted insurance rates on it. And if we've got that information, we can help to make that happen. So just to let you know that there'll be a push for that. There will be some revision to officials development pathway as we get more information and as we build out structures a little bit more. The version that's on the website right now has some links to some documentation, but not much, I think, at this point. But we're going to be working on that. So, like, in the same way that in the coaching program, like the tools that we use to evaluate coaches, those are not held in confidence, right? Like they are publicly available. There's nothing magical about the coaching system. So I would like us to get to the same point with the officials program, but if we are relying on things like multiple choice tests, there is some good debate about whether we should just publish those tests or whether we should have the actual test be maybe a subset of a longer list of published questions. Because I think that would be if people are studying up in order to do a better job on the test, I think that can only benefit the sport, frankly, in that we would have people studying a long, long, long list of questions and internalizing more of our rules and more of our policies and process. So I think that would be good. And then the last two here, electronic record books. So I made reference to our very old looking blue books. I would love to get us to a point where we're using electronic record books. There will always be a place for paper books because we know that internet access is not universal. We need to have backups. What happens if you're traveling and you're going to a place where they don't have electronic record books or don't recognize them? There will always be a place for that. But I think if we were to go to an electronic book as the primary system for monitoring our athletes and checking them in and out of competition at all of our various stages, we could be getting a whole lot of valuable data, basically for free, right? Results of bouts, injury rates, um, who's competing where at what level, how often are they competing? Like all of these little bits of data that would be extremely helpful for everyone. And we have now run one or two minor tests with a product that could provide this service. And we're going to continue running these tests through 2026. I think I and the board are hopeful that we would be able to move to an electronic book first system starting in 2027. But that is a blue sky, very optimistic goal, although I do think we're capable of meeting it. So just to let you know that you may encounter some tests of an electronic system as you go through 2026. And then the last bit is looking at a rating system for judge performance at our nationally sanctioned tournaments. So this is something that World Boxing is doing. This is something that we know that USA Boxing is doing. And I think, frankly, it would be very easy for us to do it if we were getting that sanctioned competition reporting information regularly and efficiently up to the national office. So we are going to be, the officials committee will be exploring this. This is not a super high priority, but it is something that we think could be very beneficial for the entire official system. Because I think one of the things that we've encountered, especially looking at the selection of officials for our national championships in Winnipeg, is that we had in the past a set of known officials who were often prioritized simply because they were known and not necessarily because they were either better or worse than other officials who were at a similar level. They were just more well known. And I would much rather be selecting people based off of merit and an opportunity to get better, as opposed to just going back to the same people again and again. As lovely as they are and as good a job as they do, I think we need to have an ability to choose people in a slightly different way. So, okay, any questions? As I just realized, I've still managed to go over time by 18 minutes, but.
I don't have a question, Chris, and I can't put my hand up because I don't see the thing on my screen to do that. But I see you done a lot of great work here, and I just wanted to thank you for all that.
Well, Sonny, I can't take credit for it. I would put this strictly onto the officials committee. They've been fantastic to work with, and I will certainly pass your kudos on to them.
And I will also. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Sonny. Okay, so a reminder, we'll have a recording of this put up on the website and to our YouTube page. We are pushing the YouTube page. We lost control of our old YouTube page. We've got a new one, and we really need to get a few more people subscribed so we can actually broadcast things live on there. So if you happen to see an opportunity to go in and check out the page, we've got all our officials. We'll have officials updates, PTSO updates, coach updates, high performance updates, and of course, we've got live broadcasts coming from our training center once a week that we're putting up there, and a few shorts or whatever that the kids are producing for us these days. I've got no idea. But all that'll be up there. And certainly we did an experiment here with sort of doing a direct email to everyone, sort of inviting everyone to these meetings. That seemed to net us quite a few people, so I'm pretty happy about that. And once we get another 100 or so email addresses for the remainder of our officials into the system, I think that will go a long way as well. So great. Until then, it'll be about 4 months until the next one of these. But if anyone has any questions about any of the programming, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. That's what the job is being reactive to everyone's needs and trying to solve problems. So with that, have a great afternoon and a great Thanksgiving.